what I'm noticing is the same things are not working. The same models that I'm using, okay, as you said, the same models that I'm using with middle class white folks, good folks and stuff, is not working. And when I'm at the Catholic parish and I'm giving people assignments and they come back and they do them and they, everybody's happy and like that. Downtown, it's not working. I got mandated clients who don't want to be there, are paranoid of the system, and wonder who the hell am I, So, and I found out I wasn't the only one having that journey. So what we came to make a long story short, that many of the populations, black populations, brown populations, were working out of a different paradigm. Mm-hmm. And this one-size-fit-all that has been given so much in this Western society, we had to go beyond that. So we had to go beyond the models as they were. And we had to start to understand the orientation for people of color. And that's just to say some real basic things. That one of the main issues for people of color is relationship. Relationship. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you have to demonstrate that you can connect with folks on a real and energetic level. And people may not be intellectual, but they can feel that. And that's another thing. They, rather than knowing cognitively, they know by affect, by feeling. So instead of, they don't care that I'm Dr. Gregory from the University of Maryland, and I've been practicing 35 years. They want to know how I feel. If I feel like if I'm really concerned, if I'm really present, and I feel like I'm competent. If I can pass some of those tests, then they will engage. So, so this whole thing is this Afrocentric approach. Now, understand now. Hello?
Yeah, take it.
Okay. How we got here. Originally, it was called Afrocentric. Anybody know what the difference between Afrocentric and Afrocentric is? Where did O come from in Afrocentric? It came from Eurocentric. Understanding that we have been so programmed to look at things through that single lens, and even when we were trying to do something different, we were doing more of the same. Because so much of what we do, we act out of our unconscious mind, which is really somewhere 85-90% of our mind. So we still supporting the same mindset even when we're trying to do something different. So we call it Afrocentric. And it got to be a minute before we shifted to Afrocentric, and then some of the traditionalists didn't want to shift, so. So what we're saying is, it's not about anybody being right or wrong, but it's different ways of looking at the same experience. Mm-hmm. So people of Africans tend to be very communal. And then different rules may apply. Black and brown people, you get them together a lot of times, and they will talk all at the same time. I mean, you go home now, but if you wait for them to talk in a linear fashion one at a time, you may not get a chance to talk. Not that it's right or wrong, it's just different. It's just different. And if you look at some of the work of the scholar, African scholar Diop, he can talk to you about how this developed from the different environments that people were in, and different peoples developed different ways of interacting based on their environments. One being a communal down in the Nile Valley where there's warmth, you don't have to worry about a lot of clothes, and shelter, and even food is available like that. So you spend a lot of time communing. Up the street, in a colder environment, in Europe, those things become an issue of survival. And a more individualistic mindset is developed as opposed to the communal mindset in Africa. Not right, not wrong. The issue is when one begins to dominate and becomes the only game, then you have so many children going to school and thinking something's wrong with me because I can't shut up, be still, and learn in that style.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of African-centered
yes.
is understanding self from a ancestral place?
Yes. Understand we all come from some place. And it's not by accident. And each one of us is the latest or most contemporary representation of a stream. Whether you know your ancestors or not, whether you relate to that culture or not, we're just saying that it is more healthy and you can be more whole if you have an understanding of where you came from. Because it informs how you are in the present and where you're going. Yeah. So it's all good. It's all good. And very few of us in today's world are any one thing. But to truly understand another's culture, you have to understand your own culture. Else you go in thinking that you're 0.0 and you won't understand your own biases and preferences. And we all have them. We all have our own things that we do more easily, things that are more challenging ways of looking at things. If you're clear about that, then you can go in there owning that and participate. But if you think that you are totally neutral, you're totally objective, and you're going to sit down and, it ain't that kind of party. Matter of fact, what the physicists are saying, anything that you look at changes by the fact that you're looking at it. So we participate with our energy in any interaction that we have. So if you know where you're coming from, then you know what you're bringing to the party, and you can interact in a more honest and truthful way. And people will pick that up. You can show up. Jumping ahead of myself.
I just want to say,
go ahead.
In my experience, class is a culture too.
Yes.
I've had facilitated groups where there were people of African descent and people of European descent. When I was facilitating classes and therapy groups for parents, and they were mandated and didn't want to be there by the state. And those people who were mandated, and they were mandated because they were poor, because I never had middle class people mandated, even though they did horrible things to their children, but they never got into the purview of the state. But I found that white people of that class, you have to come the same way to them.
Yes.
Because they don't care who you are or what kind of degrees you have either. You have to bring your real self, and then they can hear you. Because and they are like black people in many ways, because they will tell you if they feel that you're being phony, and they will say it. So in that case, it's the class is a culture too, because it's people living more close to their instincts.
Yes.
And so,
In many ways, it's way gone. In many ways, race is a convenience of class. Because, even if you look back a couple hundred years ago in Europe, race was not an issue. You had people of color, Moors and such, all involved throughout Europe. And even when when this country was founded, at first, bringing in over indentured servants, but they would run away. And somebody noticed it was easier to find the black ones than the white ones, because they were, I don't know, we were easy to find. So it became a convenience that was used to divide and conquer and to meet certain political and economic situations.
We want to catch every word that you're saying.
Do I need to take this one off?
You can, yes.
Okay. All right. I can hold this. Yes, Rachel.
No, I'm just saying that's great.
That's great. Okay. Yeah, so we have, it's even racial, it's not even personal. It's not even personal. And I think we have to be careful. I said it a little earlier. If we allow someone or something to make us angry enough long enough, we will self-destruct. No matter how righteous the anger is. So we get co-opt. If we're so been fighting against the system, whatever, and fighting against people who are oppressive or dismissive or whatever, if they make us angry enough, long enough, we're going to do more damage to ourselves because it clouds our thinking, it throws off our metabolism, it throws off our emotions, it plays on us so many different ways. That's not to say not to deal. That's not to say not to deal or hold people accountable. But the issue is how we do it. Because if you don't do it in a healthy way, we become part of that which is creating the negativity, the oppression, the negative judgments.
You know, I think, more information is coming out about Martin Luther King.
Yes.
And, what he went through physically, emotionally, through that whole time when he was in the civil rights. And did you know he had migraines?
No, I didn't.
It was killing him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He would stand at the podium in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And he would give these incredible speeches in a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And if the community really saw that and saw him, they would have said, don't come tonight. Say no to this one. We'll step in for you. But because we always sometimes have to have the leader out there, the community could have taken care of him a little bit better instead of just giving him fried chicken. They fed him. But how do we heal each other when we know that that much pressure can kill us? Does that make you know?
Well, a couple of things I hear in what you say. Most of us that are here, I'm going to make a presumption that we're caretakers, natural caretakers. Before we went to school or any place, we're some of the go-to people in our families. I know some of you are younger, but this is, even when you go to kindergarten, that becomes clear. So part of the challenge is we have to become good at taking care of ourselves. One of my mentors told me years ago, one of my guides actually, and he said to me, he said, stay in shape to serve. We're past the time we can be laissez-faire about it. There was so much stimulation, so much negativity, so much of other people's agendas coming at each one of us. We have to be very deliberate, purposeful, and skillful about taking care of ourselves. And it's an ongoing process. And nobody else can tell you what you need. People can assist you, people can support you, but you have to make the decision what to work on when. The issue is to keep working. Because it's this divide and conquer thing, it's real big. Yeah. It's old too, it's real old school. It's real old school. If we can be kept arguing and pointing at each other, then the game can keep going on. Because also, anytime we are allowing ourselves to get whacked out, angry, obsessed about somebody else, ultimately, it's because that other person is reflecting a part of ourselves we haven't made peace with.
That's right.
So the work is out there, yeah, but the real work is inside here. I mean, I hate a liar and a thief. I hate the part of me that lies and steals. So if I can deal with that, I can be more compassionate to people who are living outside of themselves and more helpful. but I can't pretend that it's not inside of me. Anything that's in any of us is in all of us, to different degrees. And, some of us may be more disciplined and more focused in areas where we're not vulnerable to certain things. But all of us, have stuff, have issues.
Yeah. I hear yes. Yes, that's right. And why do we judge so quickly? Why do we feel like we are better than? And it goes back to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because that's stuff inside of us that we haven't really worked out.
And many of us would rather be right than happy, Arguments are so much about egos.
That's right.
So when I can allow you to have a different opinion, and I can still work with you, then we're covering more ground. We're covering more ground. But I gotta have it my way, and I can only see that. That means you're wrong, That's me acting out my insecurity.
These microphones driving me crazy. Sorry. I think about the sister that was pulled out of her car, and she ultimately they said she committed suicide.
Sound to blame.
That police officer.
Yes.
And she was like, "What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you messing with me?" A traffic violation.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to pull me out of my car. What was going through his mind for him to step up to her like that? Because she wasn't going to allow him to do it. I mean, she questioned him.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have some people say, well, she should have kept her mouth shut. She just should have realized that he was authority, and she could have probably still been living today. And so when we talk about what's happening out there in the world and how people are starting to speak up for themselves and just be themselves, how do we look at this, what you're talking about?
A couple comments. I don't think you're really free until you have something that you're willing to die for. Okay? As I see it in that interaction, so many interactions, I said it a little earlier, I think was as much, if any of us are a victim, all of us, he's as much a victim as she is. Okay? What I mean by that too is this. I think the police are set up. We live in a police state where they're trying to keep a lot of us under control now because of the wealth disparities and all the things that are going on. So they keep them, and so the police get hyped up and pushed to control rather than to serve, and that's some of the results of it. So if they were both my children, I would be more concerned about him. She stood up for what she thought was right, and she got taken out. That'll happen. The rumor is you can't stay on this planet in the physical form anyhow, so it happened. But I would feel more about him, because you have to turn off part of yourself to injure somebody like that. You have to dehumanize the other person, and that means you have to turn off part of what makes you human in order to hurt somebody else. And you can call that mental illness, or whatever you want to call it. But the person who is doing that injury is actually robbing themselves of their humanity. And no matter what he does with that, I know that doesn't bring him peace inside.
And the most likely form of looking at that situation is that, when I have white students and I'm like, this is the community that you need to be healing.
That you need to what?
Be healing.
Be healing.
A lot of times people come into the black community, they want to heal us.
Wow.
you've got a community that's truly out of whack. And why aren't you concerned about that police officer and his family and his children, who's going to be messing with our children later on? And so that's what I'm kind of curious about that. Why are people coming always into our community? And when they don't see that illness existing?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
White people are terrified of other white people. It's like there's a trauma within the contemporary white culture that atrophies humanity. And that's why there is a lot of turn away from white people, turning away from white people in therapeutic settings.
So that's part of that separation mentality, individualistic, and part of where that goes is only way I can be all right is to take care of me and not you, which is a setup, because ultimately each one of our welfare is tied to every other living thing on this planet. I mean, the physicists are saying it now. We're just one organism with different cells. So, what did Angela Davis say? If they come and get me today, they come and get you tomorrow. So when they run out of Sandra Bland, if we come and get the police, he'll be the issue, because that process will continue to go after people that are deemed unwanted for whatever reason. So that separation thing does keep us fearful of each other. And we get fed so much, another one of my guys on the talk says about unplugging. That we get so much programming from the media. Like I said, they spend millions of dollars on those Super Bowl commercials because they know if they can get just our attention for a few seconds, they can plant their agendas. So when we really tune in and we think we're just vegging out, we're receiving that. So part of being deliberate is deciding what goes in here, because what goes in gonna come out. So it's being deliberate and intentional about what I allow into my space, what I accept in my head and into my heart. Because if I'm not gatekeeping, believe me, there are forces out there that are spending a lot of money, time, and some of the best science around trying to influence how each one of us is.
And so, when you're working in Baltimore, and the whole world was looking at Baltimore last year. Well, we knew Baltimore was like that forever.
Yes.
That wasn't new for us. Separate, it's a tale of two cities, actually. And Philadelphia, and Detroit, and a lot of those
Washington
places.
and Chicago, yes.
That's right. And so when I'm moving us towards, N2, why are we talking about N2 this evening? N2 psychotherapy. Can you talk about, what your perspective of Baltimore, and were you in the midst of talking to those young men and women and families and during that time?
I got called into a lot of situations to talk to a lot of different people. And the real issue was to help people to talk about what was going on. A lot of what we call listening sessions. One was down at the nursing school where I work. It was basically white females, but there are sizable minority populations also, and helping people to process, because a lot of people don't understand. So why are they tearing up their neighborhood? I said, oh, you think it's their neighborhood? They don't think so. They don't think so. And helping people to understand the issues of white privilege, helping the people to understand how structural racism, and how when a person it becomes hopeless, it becomes dangerous to themselves and to other people. Okay? So this whole thing. Even now, we're still working on some issues to get to engage more young people. I'm working for a group. We have a farm, and to get people off the concrete. Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
I'm back on.
Yeah.
Out to the farm and to do creative expressions. Learn to express those pent-up feelings, through dance and through music and poetry. Y'all don't know about that, though, right? Okay. So we're still all trying to work and do that and heal. But one of the things that's happening, is there's no jobs in this economy. As the jobless rate is going down, but there's really no jobs, okay? And folks know that. So that means that the drug man is still the biggest employer around. But in this shift to this new paradigm, where's the photographer? Sister's taking pictures. She's not here, right? We were talking a little earlier. They're saying that millenniums now are saying they're not looking to work in corporate America. They're looking to own their own businesses and do startups and such. Many people are predicting that this society is going to unravel. It's already gone, really. A game of Monopoly, all the money's in one place after a while, and the system implodes. And over in Greece, they had they went to bankruptcy and you couldn't get money out the ATM. So this thing could change quickly. So when I hear young people talking about doing their own businesses, breaking down at community levels, not trying to do worldwide, but trying to offer services and goods within their families and communities, I say yes, because we could very readily get down to the community level, but that's sustainable. What we're doing in the world right now on a global level is not sustainable. And Baltimore is not different than Syria or Nigeria or the Gaza Strip. Everywhere it's the same thing. Put different names on it for the news, but it's the same issues. It's about haves and have-nots. And many of those groups that are coming up so aggressively, we've created them by locking them out, and a lot of times by the violence that's been committed against them before they got in there. So, again, but much of this stuff is unsustainable. The issue will be, how do we prepare? So N2 says that we work on some very basic principles. It says a principle of harmony. Harmony comes a couple ways. It comes body, mind, and spirit. Say, health is about having all of those systems in alignment and working together. What the research says, if 60 to 70% of most major illnesses is stress. So what I do with my emotions and my thoughts, it's going to affect my somatic issues. So it's body, mind, and spirit, but also harmony in terms of relationships. And again, to really be harmonious in relationship means, to one thing, that we have to listen and live empathetically with each other. Understanding that everybody is right from their perspective, And our ability to negotiate and compromise is the foundation of our working together. Whether we're talking dyads and couples, or whether we're talking nations. And to me, that's the single greatest issue we have. We have to get better at working together. Yes, ma'am.
I was in Mexico recently for about 6 months, and in the Chiapas area, this is on the border of Mexico and Guatemala, and they have the Zapatista communities there. And I'm not sure how many folks have, know much about the Zapatistas. I actually didn't know very much until I ended up at a seminar that they held there, and it's an 8-day seminar in May, and it's free, and they host you, and they're basically a community that's been sustaining for about 20 years now without any help from the government. And they have about 7,000 people in these communities. They've developed oppression-free schooling techniques and curriculums. They offer Spanish classes as well, and it really kind of opened my eyes to how to sustain communities at that large. They're kind of set up in they call it a caracol, so it's like a spiral of communities, and then they have like a center. But they hosted us in one of the communities, and they were able to seat 2,000 people in their community hall, because that's how often they have community meetings. It's total democratic system. They're open to people of all race, class, gender, and sexual orientation, and they're really, really eager to share what they've learned from their work. And a lot of them, they if you get a chance to check it out, it was really.
They are more and more intentional communities.
Yeah.
And a lot of the research said, some of the people who are living longest in the world are in some of these intentional communities, because you know how many of us get illnesses from just sitting down so much. Well, most of the intentional communities, people are more active and they're more deliberate about their diets and such, and there are more and more of them. There are also indigenous communities all over the world, and that's what N2 was drawing on. Knowledge from indigenous people that we have minimized in our race toward technology that has been dominant in the Western world. So yeah, they may not know how to send a rocket to Mars, but some of them know how to get along and how to do sustenance farming and fishing and then spend the rest of their time communal. And I don't know how to tell you all this, but many of them don't have mental health workers.
You mean that we won't be working there?
Because it's built into the culture. The men get up in the morning and they go fishing, and by noon they're sitting under the trees and they're dancing and drumming and telling stories and like that. And we were looking back at them in the West, oh, them poor people. No, they're living well. While we're getting, stressed out and ulcers and fighting among ourselves and stressing about not having enough money, So N2 was an effort to utilize that ancestral knowledge, and apply it into contemporary situations that help us to develop, honor, and facilitate healthy relationships.
I know the first time we met each other was working with a concept called Rites of Passage.
Yes.
And bringing that African tradition to Baltimore, to DC, where we brought together young people who have either been mandated because they were in the system, or foster care children. Who were dealing with, parents who were, going through all kinds of challenges. And so that rite of passage, can you talk about how powerful doing a rite of passage program is with, and using into.
So you know what a rite of passage is? Rite of passage is an event or process of helping an individual move from one stage of development to another. Okay? So actually, marriage is a rite of passage, and so is death. You know, there are many more. So we would work with adolescents or pre-adolescents, and we would take them through a process of learning about their cultural identities and learning about their individual family history, and learning communication skills and conflict resolution skills and such, and all of this stuff. And we take them through a cycle, I think for a year and a half, and then they would have to present to the elders, because the leaders were called elders, in a way that was sanctioned by the elders in order to graduate. So in other words, you have to present to the community. Some folks in Jewish bar mitzvah, you'd have to present to the community in order for the community to say that yes, you're ready to move to the next stage. So, and what that part of what that does, that connects you to the community and creates a relationship where you know that you're responsible to and accountable to this community for certain behaviors, certain processes. And so, even when I get back, I have to meet with a Rites of Passage group. Many of the young people who were in Rites of Passage of us are now leading Rites of Passage.
That's right.
Yeah. So now, what happens?
It's about reciprocity. That's right.
And if we don't do it in a proactive way as society, then how does it happen?
The gangs.
Gangs. Same thing. You
Initiation.
Where you have people get initiated, get beat down or whatever, or have to hurt somebody or sell a certain amount of this or that. Those are rites of passage also, but they aren't community sanctioned. It's like everybody wants to be good at something. If I cannot be good at something that's pro-social, I will be good at something that's anti-social, but I'm going to be good at something. So if I can't be a good student or athlete, then maybe I'll go for the class clown or class bully or something. But I'm going to do something that gives me some esteem and makes me feel I have some worth and some power.
I know when I did a Rites of Passage program in Richmond, we have a Richmond here too. And I had the students choose an ancestor of African descent who made a contribution in America, right? And this one young man who was having a lot of problems, his father said he wanted him to be part of this summer rite of passage. It was a 6-week rite of passage program that I did. And his father says, my son needs to be here because he's getting in trouble all the time, and I just feel like I don't know what you're going to do with him. That harmony and trust is what we're talking about. That's the first stage of NTU, building harmony and trust. So he said to me, as I was talking to the parents about my proposal of bringing rite of passage to this church, it was church-based rites of passage. He says, honey, I don't know what you're going to do with my son, but I have a feeling you're going to do something. And I said, leave him with us, he'll be okay. Well, I said, you can't choose the regular people. I don't want to see no papers on Martin Luther King. I don't want to see Harriet Tubman. I don't want to see, I don't know, who's another one here?
George Washington Carver.
Oh, George Washington Carver. Well, they could have learned something about him. And so I said, I brought some books, and I had Ella Baker, and I had, there's a movie about her right now, a documentary of Nina Simone, thank you. And so I chose all these people they had never really heard of before. And this one young man looked at this one book and he said, Thurgood Marshall, who's that? I said, oh brother, you don't want to touch that book. You don't want to touch that book. And he was like, why? I said, you don't want to touch him. He's powerful. What did he do? I said, you can take a look at the first couple pages. And he looked at it, and he sat there by himself, and he kind of looked through, and he said, came back, and he says, I want to do this one. And I said, why? He said, he was the first black judge, Supreme Court judge. I'm like, yeah, so why do you want to hold on to that? He says, because I see so much murder and crime in my neighborhood, I want to defend, I want to be somebody like him. That's rite of passage.
A brief commercial. So many of our young people are labeled ADHD. Okay? ADHD is a learning style. We label it. This whole thing about labeling people, that's a convenience for clinicians and insurance companies.
Yes.
Okay? That's a learning style. These kids were not made, the species is still evolving. It's still evolving. And these kids were not made to shut up, be still, and pay attention. Like I would not try to teach black pre-adolescent boys without drums. You know why? Because the main kid who is on Ritalin and can't stay still and stuff, he can do any rap in the world. If you put it to a beat, put it to a rhythm, he can learn and remember anything. Yeah? So it's about teaching them in their learning style rather than requiring that they do a learning style that's not indigenous to them. I remember my son, my youngest, 31 now, and they called me up to Catholic school. They called me, asked me to come in and talk to them about black boys before I could get started. The teacher said, I want to talk to you about Elias. I said, yeah, what are you doing? She said, he's doing stuff. I said, what's that? Well, sometimes he plays with his tie. I said, what? And he'll roll his pencil sometimes. No. And sometimes he'll hold his hand up, and before I can call on him, he'll answer the question. No, he didn't. So we got through that. The next time we go up to the school. We go up to meet with the nun who's the head, and they give them our report cards. And she said, Elias was playing with something of it. And she has all these envelopes on these kids. And she pulls out a little piece of string. And so he was playing with this. My wife's a therapist too, she's a social worker. She looked at me, I know that let's get my son out of here. Took him out of that school. Found a little religious school up in the community. Only 20 students in the school. And we took him to the school and we met the principal. And this is the principal, this is my wife. She goes right up to his face. I'm bringing my son here a genius, and I want him back the same way. And then we started to design programs to deal with his energy. So when he finished his work early, he had 3 choices.
That's right.
He could go right on the board, work on the computer, or tutor certain designated students. But he didn't have to shut up, be still. Because that's torture for him. That's not his learning style.
That's right.
We've already had the experience of being told that he's a problem child.
And he's not even 5 yet.
There seems to be a real problem in my observation with people of color who tend to be more animated, more vibrant, and more expressive. When the majority is white, there is a problem with that. There were some black women recently who were kicked off the wine train in Napa Valley because they were laughing while discussing a book in their book club.
Right.
I'm concerned about my nephew, and I don't know how to engage his mother.
Well, you're in the right place, okay? It's engage his mother. And the thing that I see that engages people more than anything is empathy. So so your engagement with her starts with you're talking about the difficulties she's having in getting her son's needs met or cooperating, however she frames it. But it has to be around meeting her needs. You know, that animated part. One of the, as probably some of you might have noticed, I talk with my hands, you know. So I remember the first time in college, you know, they tell you, you know, you have to make a presentation and sit still, stand still. I can't do that, you know. I mean, that's just, my brain won't engage unless my hands do it. One of my jobs at University of Maryland, Baltimore, I worked for an Italian guy, Carlo Di Clemente, the Stages of Change guy. And he talks with his hands too. So, you know, if you talk with your hands, I'm fine. But if I got to do this, no, something's not going to get done. Okay. So you got to work with the mother. And again, we have to help these kids to, we have to create systems that accommodate their energy. Right now, the school system is only working for about the middle 60%. If you're 20% on either end, it's not meeting the needs, and it's getting worse. All of this testing, the teachers are complaining. They spend all of their time testing, and that, to some extent, that's about a weeding process. That's about tracking. That's saying who we're going to invest in and who we're going to build more jails for. You know, it's not about educating, and let's tell the truth. In today's so much of schools right now is about conformity. It's about teaching people to conform and to memorize stuff. You can make straight A's from kindergarten through PhD. That does not make you educated. That may prepare you for an education, but you have to get out and figure out how that stuff applies. So it's not just about regurgitating stuff. It's one of the tenets of N2. And this is what we really work. See, this is not something you do with your consumers, your clients, or patients, however you call them. This is something you have to live. Because you are what you bring to the party. And you can't take anybody any further than you are. And ultimately, each one of us is energy. So if your energy is not healthy, it's not pure, it's not enhanced, then you can't take somebody else, no matter how many words you know or how many theories you know in your head. Because we all know, knowing something in our head and getting into our lifestyle may take a little bit. You know? We call it mind training. Each one of us has an obligation to train our minds to do the things we want it to do. The mind is such that it's like a computer, it's on automatic. Whatever desire you have, the mind's going to think about ways to get it. It ain't personal. It's not personal. When the mind is hooked up with the heart and integrated in a holistic way, then you have a chance of getting charge of the mind, of disciplining it enough to sort of go the way you want to go. That don't mean it's not going to rebel. It's not going to counterattack. We're creatures of habits, and we all have addictions. The only issue is whether you're going to addict yourself to things that are life-enhancing or things that are destructive.
Can you, because a lot of them won't be with us this weekend, because we're going to do a whole 2-day intensive about the theories around N2 and the application of it. But can you take folks through the principles so that people can see how you would, it's a circular, it's not a linear way of working at all.
Okay. 4 principles. The first is harmony. Again, harmony in body, mind, and spirit, harmony with your environment, harmony with other life forms, humans. And then there's balance. Balance is the balancing of what appears to be opposite forces. So, you know, what might that be? What might that be? What are these kind of things you need to balance in your life?
Fear and bravery.
How say it?
Fear and bravery.
Fear and bravery. There's a appropriate time to be fearful.
Action and rest.
Action and rest. Yes, 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 yes. Giving to others and taking care of yourself. Eating and not eating. You know? Or how about, I do a lot of couples work, how about relationships? If you look at them as being complementary, then there's a balance. This party leads sometimes, this party leads sometimes, but nobody's in charge all the time and nobody's right all the time. We're not doing anybody's way all the time, but we are balancing it all. Sometimes this party leads and sometimes this party leads.
And sometimes you're together and sometimes you're apart.
Yes, yes.
And the balancing act between the two to remain fully self, but also be able to be in couple together.
Yes, yes, yes. Because you don't want to lose yourself in the relationship. So that's balance. That's balance. Then there's interconnectedness. One of my favorites, interconnectedness. Again, that says that we're all connected. All life forms on the planet. And according to the physicists, everything is alive. This table is alive. The air is alive. It all is alive, and we're all connected to it. So again, the welfare of somebody in Bongo, you know, is literally tied to ours. We cannot say it's them and it's us. It's just us. Sometimes I imagine, you know, some beings coming from another planet, and they look at us like we look at ants. You know, you look at ants and talk, the red ones don't want to deal with the brown ones, and the brown ones don't want to deal with the black ones, and they act like that something other than ants. You know, we got to be funny to other beings. Y'all with me?
Yeah.
I mean, this you don't think this universe would just put all of these billions and billions of universes, galaxies, would put it just for this one little planet, right? Okay, I'm just checking.
So interconnected.
Interconnectedness. And then another one of my favorites, authenticity. Authenticity. You know, what it say? It starts with knowing yourself, and that's an ongoing process. In order to really know yourself, two things: it's an ongoing process, and you have to stay open. Anytime you think you've got it, you're probably stuck somewhere. It's an evolving process because we're evolving beings. We're evolving beings. It's not like we get there and we've arrived and it's over with. It's a continual process.
You mean once you get your PhD, it's not over?
You wish.
That's the ultimate.
Yeah. And again, you don't have to know a lot of information and have degrees and status and titles to be authentic. You know, there are people who lived on one little acre of land their whole life who know more about the universe than many of us who've been to a lot of universities, you know. Because life is teaching all of us what we need to know all the time. And if we're open and authentic and really engaged, lessons are coming to us all the time.
How would authenticity, how would you hold that when you're working with a young person?
Don't pretend that you know something that you don't know. Now, if you're working with young people, I think you ought to do a little research. You need a cultural informant. You know, somebody to help you to know what books to read and some of the music and what people are watching. You know, like that, but you don't go in there pretending that you're an expert or you know, using contemporary slang. You know, I was saying something the other day. Somebody said, "That's old school." I said, "Yeah, I'm old school." So you don't pretend, and you can even as a helper, you can tell people when you don't know. Say, I'm not sure what to do with this, I think I need more information, or, you don't have to pretend that you know all the time, because people know the difference.
Well, it's interesting because, a lot of our students go on to do their practicum work. And I think probably the first client that our student has, it's like, I don't want that client to know that this is the first client that I've ever worked with before. And so how do you be authentic when you are practicing? When you go out there and you want to show your client that you do know something.
Well, you do know something.
You do, that's right.
You do know something, but don't pretend that you've seen 10 people if you haven't seen one. Share with them. Listen. In a real therapeutic relationship, I don't care if you've been doing this 40 years, you're supposed to be learning from your clients, too. I mean, not about them, about you. In a real therapeutic relationship, it's a two-way street. So you can appreciate and let them, and they're the authority on them. They are you may know something about adolescence, and you may know something about change and health and all that.
CBT or...
Yes, yeah, all the models. But they're the expert on their lives. And if you treat them that way, in an empathetic, authentic way, you usually get better results. Now, when I say better results, it might not be the result that you want. This whole thing about outcomes is a setup, okay? Outcome, yeah, you work toward a goal, but you may or may not get there. I've had clients that I thought, I remember one of those 16-year-olds I was working with one point, and for a whole semester, and, I just thought it didn't turn out too well, because he never said too much or whatever. So I'm driving down the street one day, and somebody's running behind the car calling my name. I didn't recognize the voice because I'd never heard it before, So I stopped, and he comes up to me, and he starts telling me how much he got from what we did together. This is 2 years later. And he said he's got a son on the way, and he's going to use some of the same thing with his son. Or the kid who calls me from jail, and I said, "Are you in jail, man?" And I'm feeling like, damn, I didn't. He said, "I really want to thank you, Mr. Gregory." I said, "Thank me, but you're in jail." He said, "You don't understand. You need skills in jail." And when I looked a little closer, he was headed to jail way before I met him. If anything, maybe we slowed the process down and got him a little less time.
That's right.
So outcomes, no, it's about process. If you have a healthy process, you're going to have good outcomes. Whether it's going to happen in 90 days or whether it's what is prescribed by the funding source or that you want, don't know about that. But if you're putting positive in, you're going to get positive out. If I can say one more thing about NTU, a major part of this to me is the competency orientation. And I know everybody talks about strength-based and all of that. And we do that, and then we go right back to being deficit-oriented. And the truth of the matter, as clinicians, you can't get paid unless you do the DSM, and that's deficit-oriented. That's what you do to get paid. That's what you do to keep living indoors and having a car and whatever. That doesn't have a lot to do with your client. There's another way of looking at diagnosis, dimensional, which says everybody has everything, we're all on a continuum. Because the truth of the matter is no two people manifest their symptoms exactly alike. So, that whole thing of I think as a society, we are maybe I used to say in the kindergarten, but maybe we're coming out of elementary school in terms of the competency orientation right now. We have a long way to go. Because the truth of the matter is, you can be no more competency oriented with your client than you are with yourself. And most of us, if we gave you a test right now and said, give me a list of your faults and your attributes, we'd be much clearer about what our faults are. Okay? So this competency orientation is that, what do I bring? You never know a person by what they can't do, what they don't do well. To tell you I can't fly an airplane tells you nothing about me. But if I tell you I play tennis, it tells you a little bit about me. So it's about being able to look at people and understand everybody has value, everybody has talent, everybody has competencies, and part of our job as helpers It's helping people to be clear about that and empowering them to use those in their lives. I've seen a lot of clinicians that think once I label somebody, properly, my job is done. No, that's what you do to get paid.
Okay, let's open it.
I just want to say that, speaking about helping, I'm thinking, I know that this whole situation of joblessness is going to get worse. Jerry Rifkin wrote the book, The End of Work, and I think it was in the 90s. And the picture that he painted, we're living it right now, with the IT companies having all of the work and people not having those skills just being left out. So I'm wondering, how as helpers, do we help people still have a sense of safety and a sense of security when there are no more jobs, when they're not going to have a future as workers? Okay. They're not going to have a future. But yet still they are already alive. They are eating something every day and having, maybe not living where they want to, but not recognizing, the fact that they have an energy that is still flourishing. How do we help people in that situation?
So we help them to find their note. We help them to find their note in the orchestra. Okay. I was there. I'm talking to a woman. She's, I guess, in her early 50s. She's a peer counselor at a substance use program. Maybe 30 years using drugs. She doesn't do school well, and now they all have to be certified. I'm supposed to be helping them. She might not make it. She happened to let out that she used to make clothes, and she makes prom dresses for people. So I said, make me something, So it's not about everybody making $1 million.
Right.
It's about doing, so you like children, Okay, everybody may not be able to get licensed as a daycare provider, but you can in your community keep somebody's children. And every community, where it's real community, you always had somebody around there, some fix-it man. Or somebody who could sweep up the yards, or who could mow the grass, or who would wash a car, not heavily skilled, but who could do those things in communities. So again, I think all of us have something we can turn into resources once we drop this paradigm of we all got to make $100,000 and it's got to come in a check form from some. No, that's not. We're going to a new paradigm. Matter of fact, I train a lot of young people, and I always recommend them, make sure you have something you can do with your hands. Something you can do with your hands. Farming, cooking, sewing, bricklaying, something. In case the systems, fold, you can still make a living anywhere in the world with your hands. It's a little personal. I came from a family of mechanics, and I didn't get those skills, so I'm still, a little hating on that a little bit. There's another hand. Yes.
There was something that you mentioned earlier, I felt like it was ages ago, about the rites of passage, and in talking about rites of passage, following youth through games. And as someone who appreciates balance, and as someone who grew up in a area that was known for gangs, one of the most violent and vile gangs I ever witnessed was a government-sanctioned, civic sanctioned gang, the LAPD. And I feel like in terms of like rites of passage, like military and also like, the police are also, should be a part of that conversation.
When I had done, I didn't have a real good relationship with the police when I was coming up. And after I started working in DC, I bought a brand new saw, and I had a head full of dreads, and this was in the early 80s, and the car used to go fast sometimes. I didn't stop all the time. And I'm getting into these things with the police. And a couple of times it got really little dicey. So at that one point, we had some training with the police, and I went and I did the training, and I started to see them differently, understand that they are scared, and when they get stopped, when they stop somebody, they don't have any idea what's going on. Most of them are undertrained, undersupported, and I see them. That doesn't justify them hurting people, you know. That doesn't justify them being a gang. But I'm just saying, we're all in this together at some level, and those are people doing some unreasonable jobs, and they are suffering under the structural racism too. They don't even know it many times, but they are also. Yes.
I was watching just 2 days ago the Black Panther thing on PBS, and I saw something I never saw before.
Mm-hmm.
I had an empathy for the white power structure, because there was something strong coming at them that they did not understand, and they weren't able to appreciate what was healthy and positive about it, because they were just looking at a very surface level.
Yes.
They were seeing black leather and guns and whatever, and strong rhetoric, and they just didn't get it. And I was seeing them as kind of pathetic, and not so much not as a bad guy as I did before, quite the same way.
Yeah. I mean, they were intimidated.
Yeah.
You know, insecure, and trying to control everything. The more you try to control stuff, the more out of control stuff is. And when you have to live with that, trying to control the whole world, that keeps you in turmoil. That keeps you in turmoil. You know, you're trying to keep all y'all in check. That's right. And then some of you want to run around with weapons and black Tams on stuff. Incidentally, again, one of my buddies was in that, Paul Coe. So some of you heard of the book Between the World and Me? Ta-Nehisi? Yeah, his father was in that also. Yeah, they're from Baltimore. Other questions or comments? Okay.
What are you thinking? I mean, we've been talking for an hour and a half. What are you sitting with?
What do you see justice as? You know, I mean, if this is the big struggle, what is justice?
What is justice? I guess my first thought is the universe is in charge of justice. The universe is very organized. It is very balanced. That does not mean that we don't require, advocate for, hold people accountable for being just and equitable on this physical level. But the universe has a big arc, and what goes around comes around. And nobody escapes, no thought, no emotion, no behavior escapes the universal hand. So whatever is done in the dark comes to light over time. And we think 400 or 500 years is a long time. Not so much, especially if you understand that spirit is eternal. Especially if you understand that even when you drop this physical body, the energy goes on, and many say it recycles. So 400 or 500 years in this cycle, you know, it was like remember being 7 or 8 years old and you couldn't wait to my 3-year-old's granddaughter. I met her for the first time. She was over the house last weekend, and my father, who's 90, was asking her, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" She said 5. You know? And that seems a long way away for her. Long way away from her. I don't know how I got to be 66. You know? I don't remember how I got to be. So the time again is relative. Time is relative. Space is relative. There are the temporal parts that pass, and there's that which is permanent. Health for us is getting more in touch and more in tune with that enduring, permanent, eternal part. The drama will fade. The drama will fade. A lot of times, one of my mentors told me, said the best thing you can do in a crisis is be still. Be still. Because if you do something to react in the wrong way, you can inflame it. But the first thing you do is be still, settle inside, get some direction.
Why is that so difficult?
Because we're overstimulated and we take our minds too seriously. There's nothing trickier than the mind. The mind can make you believe that you're doing one thing when you're doing something else. So at some level, we have to learn how to watch our minds go past, watch our thoughts go past. That part that watches, that observer, that begins to be the beginning of the real person. And the more we're in touch with that person, the more we can settle and not get thrown off by this constant barrage of stimulation. And part of this thing, too, is simplifying our lives. Simplifying our lives. That may be as simple as getting rid of some of the stuff. Everything you have, everything that we have requires some mental energy to take care of it, to maintain, and to try to keep it. So it's to simplify our lives and watch what goes in, make sure that we're feeding ourselves the kind of things that help us to be more calm, more centered, more connected, more in harmony, more present in our lives. To be more deliberate. Yes?
So you asked what I'm thinking about, and I don't even know what I want you to say about it. Just a few words about, I'm thinking the word microaggression, and that in our society, it's so prevalent in a variety of ways, and so I don't know what I want to say other than just to put that out there and just have you respond.
Okay. Forgive them. They don't know what the hell they're doing. That don't mean you don't deal with them, but you don't take it on. But you forgive them, and dealing with them may take different forms.
Yes. Well, what do you mean forgive? People sitting here like, yeah, right.
Forgive. Just saying, if they would do better if they knew better. What they're doing, if they're doing something against me, they're doing something against them. Because like I said, you have to close down your heart. You have to close down part of yourself to move against somebody else. Okay? So if they're doing that, they're being destructive to themselves. Now, that doesn't mean I won't deal with them, but I'll choose my battles. Because if I deal with every microaggression, I'd have never got here. I'd still been on the first airplane, dealing with folks about stuff. Because you have to make some choices. When is the time to speak, and when is the time to be still? Sometimes the best answer is stillness. So I'm just not going with you there. I am not giving you the power over me. And what I'm going to do too, I'm going to try to take my microaggressions out of the formula. Because I have to watch. I'm a people watcher. So I'm watching people all the time. I'm driving around. And I compete with folks, young brothers with their pants down around their ankles and this or that. I have to watch myself about judging them, So when I'm on, what I'll do, I say, instead of judging, I'll send them a prayer. Just if they catch my attention and such that I think I gotta watch this film of prayer. So I won't be the one doing the microaggression.
In response to that, the sending of prayer, I really see that as a way of resourcing, as a way of self-care. It's like feeding two birds with one seed. You're resourcing for yourself, and you're also feeding another person. And that theme has been coming up for me, self-care and resourcing amongst all the microaggressions. And I am really open, especially to African-centered ways of resourcing in the moment. One of my resources is drumming and singing and dancing, but that's not always appropriate in different arenas of life. So I'm just interested in creative cultural ways, just like that little tidbit right there. Like, I'm gonna use that instantly,
And as you drum and you dance, you can't do it all, but that builds your capacity.
Right.
Your capacity to cope, to deal with the craziness, to be focused, to keep your centeredness. And then you do your affirmations and your mantras, to keep yourself focused where you want to be. You don't leave it up to somebody else. You take charge of how you decide how you want to be, and be deliberate, intentional, and focused on that. This anger thing is so subtle and so pervasive in our society. I think the most successful revolutionaries have been the ones who were clear that they were doing it out of love. The ones who were doing it out of love. Because the question becomes, what do you believe in? If you believe that love is the healing force in the universe, is the most powerful force, the enduring force in the universe, then it may behoove you to try as hard as you can to align yourself with that. If you believe smacking out of somebody every now and then, well, that's something different, If you do, then you try to forgive yourself.
Make yourself laugh, don't you? What does humor mean for you?
Not to take myself too seriously. Most things in life, we look back on and laugh at it. We can laugh in the moment. I think it helps put things in perspective. And I think it gives us, for me, it gives me the kind of sense that I can handle things. It's like a confidence that, it's all right. May not be what I want. One of the things, something else I read, I think today, was talking about pain. And we do a lot of running from pain in this culture. Matter of fact, the incidence of trauma in the U.S. are higher than most places in the world. Certainly in Europe and most places in Asia and Africa. Even though a lot of terrible things are happening in a lot of those places. So in some ways, we, how should I say, have become very delicate. We're so used to running from pain that a little bit of it can throw us off. As opposed to accepting pain as the teacher that it is, making peace with it, and allowing it to move through us. So, trauma is not about what happens, it's about how we respond to what's happening. And we got a lot of folks in this society getting traumatized over what happens to their bicycle, or their cars, or where they're going to pay rent. Other folks all around the world living outdoors and having bombed out places and whatever, and relatives killed and stuff, and they just, get up and keep moving. Yes?
Do you feel like that's because of kind of like people like hear the level of manipulation that like people kind of adhere to on a daily basis compared to other places? So instead of like being able to learn from the pain because you have the pain and then you have to deal with it, it's like we're put into positions of pain and trauma so that they can sell us more things.
We have this expectation that life is easy, that life is all the time pleasant and smooth. Many people in the world don't have that expectation. One of my teachers, told me nothing gets in the way of relationships like expectations. If we can drop our expectations, then we're more open and we're more flexible. Mental health is about flexibility, being able to adapt to an ever-changing world. Mental illness and disorder is about rigidity, getting stuck in places, and we are very much into what we want. So that makes us more vulnerable in some ways. Yes?
I have a lot of different questions, but one of them is, you talked earlier about the principles of NTU, authenticity and balance and
harmony and interconnectedness.
I'm just curious how those came about in the work and how they come about in the work that you do, because those are amazing principles.
Okay. That was the result of research. As you look at many of the spiritual systems from around the world, those principles are obviously not exclusive to N2. You find them resonating in many systems throughout the world. Okay, so we just took those, and actually Dr. Fred Phillips was the person who did the research and codified those principles. Myself and other folks after that added on to it, but Fred Phillips is the person who initiated the N2 model. So these are principles that we saw in so many communities, within so many religions and spiritual practices, and said, oh, that makes sense. Yes, sir.
I think at one time he was offering certifications into psychotherapy. Does that still exist?
That still happened. Matter of fact, I spoke to him right before I came, and for the course we're offering this weekend, those hours it's possible to use those hours towards certification. So we're going to do actually 16 hours, and you need I think it's 20 hours of didactic plus a few other things in order to be certified. So that will count towards certification if anybody's interested. Yes?
I'm curious about your dream life and how your dream life interacts with your work.
Well, I used to have this dream where I was running all the time and something was chasing me. And then one time a friend, she just told me, she said, well, why don't you stop running? Excuse me? So that's what I did in my dream. When whatever was chasing me, I stopped and turned around, and as it came closer to me, it just dissolved. And I didn't have that dream anymore. I had that dream for years as a young adult. So dreams are on a lot of levels. Many indigenous people live by their dreams. It's just another point of reality. And even in the Western science acknowledges the last 90 minutes through which we do REM sleep is when we get into our deepest states of relaxation, and also where we are most influenced. Where we're most influenced. So you, what this person was proposing, if you want to send somebody something, that's probably the most receptive time to send it to them. So they get up 6 in the morning, between 4:30 and 6 might be the best time to send it to them. If you want to send it, by in the ethers. Did I answer? Was there another part to that? Yeah. So I guess the other thing I've noticed, my dreams can be very active at times. I'm not a vivid in terms of colors and things, but vivid activities. And what I try to do, what I recommend folks to do a lot of times, is I'll write dreams down in cycles and look back at them, and they can be very enlightening and informative, like that. So, but that takes me to the issue of synchronicity. Synchronicity. When we begin to look deliberately, synchronicities to me are the universe's way of talking to us, of affirming and confirming our direction and what we're doing, of letting us know things. I was telling Denise as I was coming out here, I was reading, I was catching up on my reading on 7 hours of flight, and I was reading one also about some stuff about mindfulness, and it said one of the 3 people who wrote the book was a graduate of CIIS. Synchronicity. So in my life, I'm always asking for direction. Affirmation, thy will be done, because I know Henry can get in trouble on his own, right? So I'm always asking for direction, and my experience is whenever you ask for direction and guide, it always comes. It's just sometimes clearly, sometimes not so clearly. So, we might miss it, or we're attending to other minutiae or whatever. But life is always speaking to us, and many times it happens through the synchronicities. So it's not odd for me to think about somebody and for them to call, and I haven't heard from them in 2 years. I have another, 7, 8 years, and for them to call just like that. So, because what I think happens is the energy gets there before the person gets there, or before the phone call. You pick up the energy, you start thinking about that person, then they call.
Question.
Yes.
Given that NTU core values are kind of universal to a lot of different cultures around the world, I'm interested to hear how it's unique, or a unique reflection to the African diaspora and experience.
Okay. Well, one piece is the goals of NTU. They fall in 2 categories. One is about functioning harmoniously and authentically within the context of your environment. And the other is following the principles of the Nguzo Saba. The Nguzo Saba, 7 principles of Kwanzaa, Malawi, Karinga, unity.
Kuji Chagalia,
Yes.
Ujima, Kujama, Nia, Kuumba, Imani.
Yes.
And then I put Heshima.
Respect.
Respect.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, universal principles, but adopted and applied to the African experience. To say this is what we're working on. Cooperative economics. That means everybody needs to kick in. Or
Purpose.
Purpose. Yeah. Everybody has purpose. I mean, part of our feeling whole in life is getting some clarity about our purpose in the world.
Kuji Chagalia, which is my favorite one.
Kuji Chagalia.
Self-determination.
So we define ourselves.
Name ourselves.
Name ourselves and not let other folks do that.
And so when you're working this way with African American families and youth, giving them something that is culturally relevant to them, and when they become empowered to understand where they come from as an African descendant, that makes it very, very purposeful in working with them. Because a lot of our young people don't know their roots, don't understand the power of their ancestors, who's still in our lives, their grandparents who passed on, who's still there looking after them. Because we think that death it's over. But from an African spiritual perspective, life is continuously going on. So when my daughter talks about how lonely she is, I say, call on your grandfather and your grandmother. They're there. They got your back. And she said, they see me, they know that I'm here. She knows that because she grew up like that. But I'm like, never forget that you always have all these wonderful people in your life. And that keeps you going. So being purposefully working with an African-centered perspective with African clients, Africans who live in America, Africans who live all over the world, helps them understand that Africa is not a place that's there, Africa's here.
How can clinicians who don't have like a background or knowledge base
come to our workshop this weekend? No, no, really, because we are teaching this for everybody. In order for, because my last question to Dr. Gregory is, how has NTU impacted your life? Because it's not just what we're learning so that we can apply it, it's what we're learning so that we can live it. So every day I live NTU, every single day. Every day, every relationship that I'm in, every conversation, every daggone meeting that I'm in this building. I go there with a sense of respect, heshima. I go there with a sense of purpose. And I have to just keep reminding myself when the microaggressions are there to love myself, to continue to love myself. And so that's how I live it. And I'm just so grateful that I was trained by Dr. Gregory to do this work. And that it's not about how I apply it to people, it's how I live my own life. Can you just tell us how it's impacted you?
It's given me some tenets and some structures to keep focused. As I've been saying, I think we all need to have a plan, an intentional plan of what I'm going to do with my focus, my energy, my mind. And so this provides to me a perfect one that is universal, that's consistent with my culture and my worldview, and it helps me to evaluate and assess when I'm on track and when I'm not. Gives me some yardsticks to measure by.
What's your recommendation as we close this evening?
My recommendation would be for everyone to ask the universe for what the next step is in their becoming whole and actualizing their potential. To ask the universe and then to look for the answer. What is the next step for you to become whole and to actualize your potential? Is that something you can do?
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. And if you're participating this weekend, you're in for a real treat. And if you're not, we'll find a way for you to, let's try to bring Dr. Gregory back. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Can you remind all the students what time we start in the morning?
10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Bring your, whatever you like to bring. Whatever makes you feel comfortable. Munchies, anything you want to bring. Water.